Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking to our distinguished guest, Mr. Syed Badrul Ahsan, editor of Asian Age, Bangladesh. That was history, and history being misinterpreted, ignored by regimes and by so many leaders, and a distorted form of history was being spread around, if I don't say being taught.
Absolutely, yes.
And you were saying something on that point.
What I was trying to say is that all these accidents or these tragic incidents that took place in Bangladesh between 1975 and, let's say, 1981, up to the killing of General Manzoor, and before that, of course, General Ziaur Rahman. None of these cases, Bangabandhu's murder case was resolved recently, a few years ago, through the efforts of the government, the present government.
Well, that took quite some time.
That took 21 years, more than 21 years. And then, again, it got stalled in 2006 when the Awami League went out of power. So I think it should be the moral responsibility of every government to investigate crime, no matter what the political beliefs of that government might be. But then that's
a very interesting question.
Because
is judiciary under the executive or judiciary independent? Because the judiciary should carry on what it
exactly
should be doing.
That is, yes, that should be there. But then again, in those 21 years, see, the judiciary did not have the kind of independence that we are so desirous of seeing in it. And then, of course, in a military dictatorship, beginning with Ayub Khan, we've always gone through this process where you cannot speak. Because I know from experience, when I joined this profession, the journalistic profession, every night, if there was any sensitive news which the government censors felt should not go, they sent what they call, in euphemistic language, an advice. That was not an advice, actually, that was an order. And then no editor would risk not obeying that advice. So these things have happened. And and the result was disastrous, because we didn't have I was referring to Bangabandhu's the Bangabandhu murder case. Now then, look at the happenings of 3rd November, when the 4 national leaders, and they were the leading lights of the liberation struggle in Bangabandhu's absence.
In the absence of, yes.
And they went to jail. They were put in jail, and in the supposed security of jail, they were murdered, and no investigations took place. Yes, some kind of a sham trial took place, and the conclusion was that one individual named Muslimuddin, he went and killed these 4. That is out of the question. One person going in and killing all 4 of these people, that sounds absurd. So which is why investigations are going on again. Then again, if you look at the other incidents that followed, say 7th November, General Khalid Musharraf, then Colonel Huda, Major Haider. Now these 3 people, these 3 gentlemen, they're valiant freedom fighters, and their contributions in Bangladeshi history are as great as anyone else's. So, and General Khalid Musharraf has the record of being known as the most brilliant of tacticians in the guerrilla war against Pakistan. So no trial has taken place. They were killed brutally. So all those years ago, in November 1975, who killed them? Who ordered their killing? And where those individuals are. I'm sure, as an individual, I'm sure that people who were involved in this killing, most of them, or many of them, are still alive. They may be getting old. But it should be our job. By our job, I mean the government's job, society's job, to find those people who were behind the murder. Then again, General Zia's killing. We still don't know. Well, 13 officers were hanged on charges of complicity in his killings. But then,
who instigated?
Who instigated them? And then there was this letter from Brigadier Mohsinuddin, who was the chief accused in that case. So, and he apparently wrote a letter to his wife saying he did not know why he had been arrested, why he was being tried. So that also raises questions. General Manzoor was killed a few days later after he was arrested. He wanted the police to not to hand him over to the army, to the cantonment. They did, and then he was killed. Who ordered his killing, and where those persons are? These things need to be investigated in the
Unanswered
interest.
questions.
These are unanswered questions. So as long as you don't answer these questions, we place the future generation, the younger generation, in a huge sort of problem. Like for 21 years, if I recall, for 21 years, we never heard of Bangabandhu. We never saw Bangabandhu's picture, or the Mujibnagar leaders' pictures, or any. There was no mention of their country.
Or read or saw history in the right perspective.
Yes, and history. If you recall, every year from the end of 1975 up to June 1996, every time when Independence Day, March 26 came around, or Victory Day, December 16 came around, there were supplements, government supplements, other supplements, but there was no mention of the fact that we waged war against the Pakistan occupation army. What they did was, they said the people of Bangladesh waged war against the occupation army. Now the occupation army, where was it from? That was not mentioned. Then again, they said the Mujibnagar government was formed, and then it took over. Who were behind the Mujibnagar government? No, there was no mention. The fact that Bangabandhu was the leader of the independence movement, his name was never mentioned. So all these things were airbrushed out of history. So, I mean, that does make you feel uncomfortable. So, thankfully, history is now in the right path. But then again, there's a whole lot more that we can do. For example, we need to reassure ourselves that if one party is guilty of distorting history, others should not be guilty, or should not do things that tell people that they're suppressing history. I mean, they're giving one side of history. So the contributions of everybody who took part in the war, who took part in the political process, Bangabandhu is there, the four national leaders are there, Maulana Bhashani is there, the sector commanders are there. Everything should be recorded. So history, once you try to suppress history, or take it away, or ignore it, or push it under the rug, that spells danger for a country.
Well, I have in my hand one of your books about this very distinguished politician that you just mentioned, Mr. Tajuddin Ahmad, Bangladesh's, was he the first?
The first, yes, the
Prime
first
Minister?
wartime Prime Minister.
Wartime Prime Minister from the Mujibnagar government, isn't it? Yes. Thank you. What motivated you to write this book, and what is it about? Because I have only been lucky to get this book just before the program.
Yeah, like so many others in Bangladesh, and of course I would say so many other Bengalis, I should say. So it was rather distressing when Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Tajuddin Ahmad had their parting of ways in October 1974.
What was the reason?
I think it had to do with policy, because Bangabandhu's foreign policy perspectives were different from Tajuddin's. Tajuddin Ahmad was a believer in socialism. Bangabandhu apparently believed that while we are happy that countries like the Soviet Union...
But socialism was one of the basic points, isn't it?
Yes.
Four,
yes.
Secularism, democracy,
it was largely, that's my opinion, largely the thought that Bangabandhu wanted a diversification of foreign affairs, internationalism in Bangladesh's foreign policy. And he was grateful to India, he was grateful to the Soviet Union, but he also believed that Bangladesh should expand its relations to embrace countries like the United States, whose government had not supported us, but the people did. And if you recall, Bangabandhu was quite, like so many of us, he was quite upset or quite sad about the fact that China did not support our liberation. In fact, after liberation, China vetoed our attempt to enter the United Nations twice. But even then, Bangabandhu did not say anything publicly that was negative about China, because he knew that China would come around one of those days, and it would be necessary for Bangladesh to forge diplomatic relations with other countries. Tajuddin, of course, had his own different sets of views. He believed that that was not the right time to go into closer relations with countries which had directly opposed our war of liberation. That was there. And there, of course, there were also differences in economic policy. For example, Tajuddin was not very happy with the fact that Bangladesh had to seek aid from the World Bank, and he had this feeling that the World Bank, under the leadership of a person like Robert McNamara, was not the proper institution to which Bangladesh should go. Because McNamara, see, at a conference in early 1972, Tajuddin was there, McNamara was also there. Robert McNamara tried very hard to meet him, see, and Tajuddin would have none of it, so they didn't meet. But this very same Tajuddin Ahmad was constrained by circumstances in October 1974 to go to Washington and talk to Robert McNamara. So that was there. And of course, by that time, and there was also the fact that there were elements in the Awami League, persons, individuals in the Awami League, who were simply widening the divide between Bangabandhu and Tajuddin.
But the good point is that the difference of opinion was
yes, so
meted out, and they settled.
And they took advantage of these differences that were cropping up. Of course, Khandakar Mushtaq Ahmed was there, very much so. Other young Turks of the Awami League, they were there. And so in October, at the end of October, Bangabandhu instructed Tajuddin Ahmed to leave.
We have not heard much of this gentleman, quote unquote, Khandakar Mushtaq,
yes,
in pre-liberation time.
He was in the early days of the Awami League, when it was the Awami Muslim League and then became the Awami League. He was, and Maulana Bhashani was president of the Awami League. He was one of the two joint secretaries of the Awami League, the other being Sheikh Mujibur Rahman himself. But then with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he went straight ahead, he forged ahead. In course of time, he became Bangabandhu because of his commitment, because of uncompromising nature. And Khandakar Mushtaq, he could not somehow emulate Mujib in that way. At the same time, there was this other point about him, that he was more of a right-wing politician. So within the Awami League, Khandakar Mushtaq was in many sense, in a sense of the term, he was a misnomer, he was a misfit. So his activities throughout his career in the Awami League, right from the 1950s, early 50s, till 1971, and again, of course, later, was that of a right-wing politician.
But he was still trusted.
Bangabandhu trusted him implicitly. And although Bangabandhu is reported that Bangabandhu used to joke with him, and but they had good relations, at least in
Working
public.
relations.
But the time when Khandakar Mushtaq's politics came under suspicion was in 1971. If you recall, he was foreign minister of the Mujibnagar government, and he was supposed to go to New York to present the Bangladesh case at the United Nations General Assembly, though we were not yet an independent country and of course not a member of the United Nations, but he was supposed to lead our delegation. But the intelligence reports came to Tajuddin Ahmed saying that Khandakar Mushtaq had been in touch with American diplomats based in Calcutta and Delhi, and once he reached New York, he would make it a point to move away from the principles or the policy of the Mujibnagar government about the war of liberation, about the fact that we are waging a war for independence. He would move from that, and he would go for a confederation. He would publicly announce
Pakistan.
And that would have undermined the government. On the one hand, the government that he's serving is waging a war of national liberation. On the other, the suspicion was that he would go to another extreme, suggesting that Pakistan could yet be part of our lives, though in a different form, in a confederal form. That was when Tajuddin he stopped Khandakar Mushtaq from going to New York, and he authorized Justice Abu Saeed Chaudhry, who was in London, to lead the Bangladesh delegation. And from that point on, bad blood developed between Tajuddin and Khandakar Mushtaq. And I believe Khandakar Mushtaq never pardoned Tajuddin for that act of not letting him go to New York. The result, as we see, was 1975, August and November. So it's again a tragedy. But I think time has come, the time is here when people in Bangladesh, especially the younger generation, should know more about Tajuddin also, because we need to know who he was, how he rose to power, what he did, what was his role in the 1975, August 1975 coup, what was his role in the murder of the 4 national leaders, because people have said, former retired police officials have said that when these killers went to Dhaka Central Jail on November 3, 1975, the jailer wouldn't let them in because that was against prison rules.
Have you mentioned it or somebody else that there was a supposed to be a call from Bongo Bhavan.
Yes, there was supposed. Yeah, I mentioned it. Other people also made it. There was supposed to be a call from Bongo Bhavan, and the gentleman who received the call, he was a senior official of Dhaka Central Jail, and he was told, and he believed that it was Khandakar Mostak, although the voice did not identify him itself. That gentleman felt the tone and tenor of the voice was that of Khandakar Mostak Ahmad.
To let them in.
Yes, and let them in and let them do whatever they want. So they went in, and those 4 leaders were dead. So that was, so these facts should be known. I mean, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to history, not only to highlight our heroes, also to highlight those people
the villains.
The villains, yes, because it's very important to remember, as in William Shakespeare, we see the roles that villains have played throughout Shakespeare's history plays, other plays. So that's also important.
Well, that's drama, but this is real life drama.
Yeah, real life drama, yes. See, I mean, see, we read in fiction, in drama, of these tragedies. See, but then, unfortunately, in our own lifetime, we have seen these tragedies, actual tragedies, being enacted in our country. Which is why, when you talk of Pakistan and Bangladesh, Pakistan has had 4 military coups, 4 military rulers. But then, those coups were very bloodless coups. But if you go back, if you go to Bangladeshi history, every coup has taken away so many lives, and there were 18 attempted coups or 19 attempted coups during General Zia's time. So I mean that was very unfortunate because so many people, 3 million of our people gave blood in 1971.
Then we have this Pilkhana carnage.
Yes, Pilkhana. See, I mean, see, it's very sad that Bengalis, who traditionally have been people who love poetry, music, songs, and of course politics. Say everywhere you go, a Bengali will always pick up a discussion on politics. That's fine. That's very good. It shows your political commitment, your sense of politics. But then the fact that politics would turn so violent, that is something that you can't accept. It has happened. You regret the fact that these things didn't have to happen. I wish if those 4 national leaders were around, if the sector commanders who were killed, the guerrilla fighters, the guerrilla officer Khalid Musharraf and the others, General Manzoor, they were all killed. If they had been around, if none of these things had taken place, Bangladesh would be a far different place. And so what has happened is after 1971, after the war, we picked up the pieces. Then after 1971, since 1975, sorry, we've been picking up the pieces. We're still picking up the pieces.
Well, we take a break, and when we come back, we will again pick up the pieces. Thank you for being with us. We'll need a short break, and then we'll come back to you. Don't go away.